When I started playing hardcore, I didn't think I'd love the game so much, but that was kind of to me a reintroduction or to the feeling that I got when I first played WoW. That everything had consequence. That if I picked up a speed potion or a swiftness potion, that could actually help me keep me alive. Like I should keep that potion. I could relish it. I don't just pop it off in a dungeon because I'm bored, or maybe like in a moment where I may or may not die. Um, did you guys know that that game, all these different elements and kind of the light of balloons and these items that you could pick up and quest around the world, it felt like in vanilla WoW or even kind of TBC, these items got lost as players kind of became better and better at playing, understood the game more and more, knew the ways to get through the content. But when hardcore was introduced as a game mode, and that was a purely kind of community led
Yeah,
feature, which
yeah.
is partially what I'm really passionate about in games is the community getting together and building on top of like a foundation. Um, did you guys ever kind of think that this game was meant to be played hardcore? Like when I play classic WoW and I'm playing in hardcore, I feel like this game was meant for this mode. It means I have to take everything slowly. I have to gather all my resources. I have to take my profession seriously. I can't just tear through the game because if I do, it will likely result in my death because of the consequence of dying in hardcore. Um,
Yeah, vanilla, like original WoW when it launched, was a hard game. It wasn't as hard as maybe the MMOs that had come before, but it was still tough. Like you died a lot.
yeah.
You would go in those what we call the micro dungeons with like lots of enemies, and if you died, you would have to corpse run, often multiple times. There was durability, so you'd constantly having to go back and repair your gear. There was ammo. There were you know, a lot of consumables that players would have to fiddle around with. Often the tuning was such that you needed food and bandages, even leveling up. And over time, like you said, as players got more sophisticated and kind of knew the rotations and the trap talents, and they knew things like if an enemy, you're fighting a knoll and it turns to run away, like there's a good chance it's going to aggro others. You either need to stop it or you need to get out of there. Like they would just learn the rules of the game. It got easier. And then on the design side, we made decisions that seemed like they were being nice to players at the time of like, oh, let's just get rid of ammo. It's a hassle. Only hunters really have to deal with it. Um, but that did, we were literally taking friction out of the game, which feels like you're doing something nice for players. But if you do that too much, you end up with something that's very, very smoothed out to where leveling is trivial. Even like dungeons are trivial, and there's never a time when you have to engage. Going back to what we were saying earlier, you aren't making interesting decisions. You're just chain pulling every mob and Aing it down, which can be fun in a like see big numbers sort of way, but it's definitely not interesting decisions.
Yeah, you lose that friction that I think is required to make the game feel real. It goes back to this idea of it feeling real. Like when I'm playing my hardcore character, before I go off and I go towards a new zone or maybe towards a dungeon, I love the feeling, and I think a lot of other players who play hardcore can attest to this. But I love the feeling of kind of getting set up, of going into my bank, having everything organized, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
a match 3 game where I go, on this side is all my linen. Here are my engineering supplies. I need to make some bombs. I need to make a target dummy. I need to make my potions if I'm alchemy. I need to maybe cook some food, repair my armor. If I'm a hunter, I need to buy my ammo. All these things kind of they create that. I don't know what it is, but maybe this is more a question for you. But what does that mean when there's a sense of preparation almost becomes the fun when on paper, you'd say that's boring. Let's make that smoother. Let's make it quicker. But I think a lot of players now are finding that that's actually what they loved about the game were those tiny little, I want to say friction points, but I wouldn't say friction, but little kind of real factors to the game that made it feel more alive. And the loss of that, I think, took away a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that play into that. One is there is a sense of the ritual. It's the anticipation of I'm going to go on this adventure, and part of going on the adventure is sharpening my sword and tying on my boots and all of that. The same way if you were a hockey player, the the ritual of like strapping on your gloves, or if you're going on vacation, the ritual of like getting out your suitcase and laying out all your clothes, like you're anticipating, which I think makes the moment when it happens kind of more meaningful because you've been looking forward to it. The other thing it did, which we probably took for granted at the time, was that downtime gave players something to do when they only had 20 minutes to log in, but they could make meaningful progress, or their friends weren't online tonight, but they could still say, well, I'm going to make some flasks for when they're here, and then we can go do a dungeon. And without that, you log in, and in that 20 minutes, you're like, well, I'm going to get some quests done, or maybe I'll even run a dungeon, because there aren't those smaller tasks that can be done.
It's like I've been referencing this a lot in other kind of podcast episodes, but there's this product idea of jobs to be done. Like, what
Yeah.
is the job to be done for the specific feature, the specific moment? Um, if I'm waking up in the morning, let's say, prior to work, I may log into WoW, into my hardcore character, and I may kind of do some consumables, or I may go kind of grind my profession a bit. That is a job to be done for that moment. But then at the end of a long work day, and I just want to kind of sit back and like do some dungeons and maybe like level a character, that is a different job to be done. And like exactly like you're saying, I'm in full agreement. Having that breadth of activity and preparation, and beyond just like the core bread and butter, which is kind of like go to dungeons, complete quests, get experience, level up. There's a whole other side to it, which when I'm thinking of future MMOs, I hope that's something that isn't lost. I hope people see friction and kind of expertise in a game to be part of the value of it. People want to invest their time into something and become good at it, not simply just kind of turn off their brain and play something that's maybe easy at the start, but with a high technical ceiling.
Yeah,
It
in a
kind of makes me,
sense,
yeah.
you're like giving yourself tasks as a player. It's almost like you're logging in and you have a quest to like brew 5 flasks and sharpen 6 swords and organize your bank, but because you're giving it to yourself, it's almost more meaningful than if the game was popping up, a checklist for you. It comes back to that sense of like agency and having enough structure that it creates fun things for you to do. And they can feel chore-like. I'm not sitting there saying that they're like the most enjoyable part of the game, but I think they offer a good contrast to the real high intensity combat moments of the game.
Have you heard of the ultra hardcore kind of mode in WoW Classic right now? It
What's
kind of picked
ultra
up in the
hardcore?
so there's hardcore, which is
Yeah.
if you die, you lose
If
your
you die, you
character,
can't
and
come back. Yeah.
ultra hardcore is kind of they take the hardcore model and they add a couple extra kind of things on top. Like you can't see the health bar of the enemy. You
Oh,
can't
wow.
see your own health bar. And as you die, as like you lose health, your kind of cone of vision starts shrinking down until by
Mm.
the point you get to 50%, maybe there's like a vignette over the screen. 20%, you can only see kind of your character. When you get to 10%, you can't even see your action bars. And it creates this high level pressure to the game that I've been watching streamers like Zaryu just take this game again. This is an age old game, and they're just breathing new life into it. And he's done like an ultra hardcore for each of these different characters, and trying to do Bangladesh in Stranglethorn with no pet, just kiting it and like just pushing it to the limit. Was that something? Does that surprise you that players are taking classic and stretching it beyond any conceivable notion?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It speaks to both that the systems are deep enough that the game supports it, and that the player interest is there, particularly as big as streaming has gotten, that it's kind of fun to watch someone else, experience that and make those decisions of. And there are certainly other games without hit point bars where you're like, should I step back now? Am I, or am I going to push it because I'm almost at victory here? Or am I taking a big risk and I'm going to die and lose it all like that? That's like going to Vegas, let it ride or not.
It's kind of weird because it feels like it's more real because if I can't see the health bar of the enemy I'm trying to kill, at some point it just dies. Like, and then obviously over time I realized I played a lot of ultra hardcore with a warrior and a hunter, and I kind of memorized when the mobs will die because you kind of tell in a zone at a particular level, like
Yeah,
after
their
X
health
amount of
tends to be
hits.
consistent enough that you can figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But still, when I first started playing, I was like, oh wow, this feels real. Like I don't know when this mob is gonna die. I just got to keep going, and there's like that level of tension. Again, I'm just truly fascinated by how a community can take the systems that you say run so deeply in such an old game and kind of keep it going to the point where you look at like more modern MMOs and none of them have that. Like that just speaks to the magic of, I don't want to just say vanilla because the TBC's coming and they're going to do a TBC ultra hardcore challenge as well.
That's awesome.